Hello, I'm Paul Larson. One of author Kate Messner's favorite times of the year is when the air turns crisp and the leaves begin to change color. In this author visit, the teacher and writer from Plattsburgh, New York, discusses her first nationally published book, The Brilliant Fall of Gianna Z. When did you become a published author?
I'd written all my life, but my first book came out in 2007. That was Spitfire with North Country Books.
Your first nationally published book, The Brilliant Fall of Gianna Z, has won some awards. What are they?
Some pretty exciting ones for me, at least. First of all, right when it came out, the independent booksellers named it as a choice on the Fall Kids Indie Next list, which is a list of their favorite books for kids for that season. It's also on New Hampshire's Great Stoneface Award, their Children's Choice Award, and just this spring it won the E.B. White Read Aloud Award, recommended as a terrific read aloud for kids, which was exciting to me. I read aloud to my 7th graders all the time.
Oh, congratulations for that.
Thanks.
What happens in the book?
The Brilliant Fall of Gianna Z is about a 7th grade girl who has a huge school leaf collection project, and she's left it to the last minute. So she ends up with 1 week to collect and identify 25 different kinds of leaves, and everything that can possibly go wrong in that week goes wrong, including a lot of funny things and some more serious things too.
Yeah, I understand there is a character in the book who is an older relative living in the house who is suffering from memory loss. What attracted you to that subject matter?
To be honest, that was not something that was in my original vision for the book. When I started developing the character of Gianna's grandmother, I found her doing things like leaving her teeth in the refrigerator and forgetting things, and that forced me to stop as an author and say, what's really going on here, and imagine the possibilities. And I got thinking, well, if there really is a health issue here, if there's something more serious going on, how much more difficult would that make it for Gianna to finish that leaf project?
Well, I love how evocative the book is of autumn. You talk about the smell of wood and smoke and leaves, and you mentioned pumpkins. I was wondering, how important were your roots to this area of the country when you were writing this book?
Very important. I grew up in the Northeast, so colored leaves in fall have always been a part of my life, and fall's one of my favorite seasons. We love to hike, and you know, that's very much a love song to this landscape, I guess, that part of the book. And that was one of the things my editor loved about it, too. She even sent me some notes saying, let's even have a little bit more of the fall flavor here.
Oh, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Well, who's the target audience for the book?
Kids ages 8 to 12 or so. There's a girl on the cover, so I think more girls tend to pick it up, but I will say that Gianna's best friend is a guy who plays a big role in this story. His name is Zig, and he's a fun character, too. So I've had a lot of boys tell me they enjoyed it as well.
Do you consciously think about that, who your target audience might be when you start to write the book?
No, not when I start to write the book. You know, later on, I think about it a little bit, but really the characters are what drives the story. And so, you know, sometimes when I'm writing, I'll think, oh, this is something that the boys are really going to like when they read, or the girls are really going to like. But that really comes later on for me.
What inspired the events in the book?
Well, I teach middle school, and the students at my school have this 7th grade leaf collection project that's become legendary and almost infamous in a way. It's a huge project. Inevitably, some of them leave it to the last minute, and I have heard the funniest stories over the years about why that is, as the kids are struggling to prepare this for the science teacher. And at one point, I just started thinking, boy, this would make a great book. So I assigned that project to my character and let the story unfold.
What advantage do your students have with a published author as their teacher?
Most of the time, I am just Mrs. Messner, assigning the homework and you know, running the lessons and reading with them and recommending books. It is really helpful when I'm teaching the revision process to kids, and I can bring in examples of my own work, and I can put it right up on the smartboard and say, well, look, here's how I handled a situation like this, here's what my editor had to say about it, and here's what I had to do to improve the writing. It I think, lends some credibility when they know that I'm walking the walk and not just talking the talk.
Do you think you're clearing up some misconceptions for them about the revision process and about what an author's vision is versus what the final book is?
I think so. I think a lot of people, when they walk into a bookstore and see the shiny books on the shelves, imagine that those are just uber talented people who just whip out beautiful prose the first time around, and I don't know any authors like that. The authors that I know who do good work because they revise and work really hard at it. So yeah, I think it helps to clear that up.
And how about the editor's contribution as well?
I think that's really interesting for the students, and I think it also makes it a lot easier for them to get a paperback from me or comments on a Word document that says, you know, maybe you could work on this or maybe you could improve this, when they see that I've gone through the same thing. And I've had, you know, people comment on my work in that way too.
Do you ever see your students reading your books in school?
I do, and the first time it happened, it was sort of surreal. Sort of like seeing my books in the bookstore for the first time. I saw them there and it was like my kids had gotten out of the house without me knowing. I wanted to go gather them all up again. But yeah, it happens quite often now, and it's, you know, it's just a quick little smile on my part. I don't say anything to them because I wouldn't want to make them, you know, feel self-conscious about it, but it's pretty neat.
That's great. Now, I understand you sometimes turn to your students for advice.
Sure, and my editor will actually sometimes say, could you talk to the class about this? Because they're our target audience, and to have them right there is good for them because they see the process an author goes through, but also great for me because I get that feedback. As a matter of fact, when we were working on the book Sugar and Ice, there was some discussion about what the title of that book was going to be, and we were going back and forth, should it be Sugar on Snow, which was my original title, or Sugar and Ice. And finally I went to the kids and I said, you know, which of these titles do you like better and why? And we discovered doing that while Sugar on Snow was a title that I loved, it made a lot of my students think of Little House on the Prairie, because there was a scene in Little House on the Prairie where they made sugar on snow, and it evoked that sort of pioneer feel, which is a story I loved, but it's not what this book is about. This book is about ice skating and competitiveness and things like that. So we ended up with Sugar and Ice, and the kids were really helpful there.
What's the story of the book Sugar and Ice?
Sugar and Ice is about a figure skater who lives on a small town maple farm near the Canadian border, and by a fluke she's seen by this skating coach who offers her a scholarship to train with the elite skaters in Lake Placid. So she's sort of uprooted from this idyllic, peaceful life and tossed into this world that is super competitive with kids from all over the place, and ultimately has to decide how she's going to handle that pressure and which dream she's going to follow.
What do you enjoy about being an author?
I've always been a storyteller. I love stories. I've always loved to read stories, and the process of creating them is one that's just a joy for me. Not to say that it's also not a challenge and a lot of hard work, but you know, to be able to, you know, spin characters and worlds out of thin air is really something, and it's a process that I'm really honored to be part of.
Author Visits is a production of Mountain Lake PBS. For more information about the authors and their books, head to our website, mountainlake.org.